Star Wars the Acolyte is the first time we're leaving the existing era behind on screen. No more skywalkers and many more new characters. But how is this going to change the galaxy? And what do we think about this new era? Welcome to Star Wars Uplink, your place for everything Star Wars gaming, the TV shows, and the movies. Let's jump in.
Just you reconsider playing that message for him.
We finally have the trailer. This has been rumored for quite some time that we will get it this year. I think it was officially announced. I actually don't know if it was officially announced for 2024, but it was heavily rumored for 2024.
Yeah.
And from what we saw at Star Wars Celebration, it definitely seemed further along than a lot of them did.
Yeah.
And the the actors and the chops that they have for this specific show is quite impressive.
Indeed.
So it's obviously highly anticipated. It's the first time that we're going to the High Republic era on screen in terms of the TV shows or the movies, and that in and of itself is a big deal, which we'll talk about later on in the episode. But I want to get started with our first impressions of it, because they announced the teaser with this awesome poster, which was super brutal and gruesome looking. It was a Sith lightsaber with a red blade but using blood. It was quite gruesome.
Yeah.
But now that we have the teaser, what are our thoughts?
The teaser, or at least the trailer, it's not quite giving the same, deep, dark, gruesome, It's not giving that. It's like, I'm so intrigued. I am so intrigued by this. Like, I'm not seeing the darkness yet.
Yes. It doesn't seem clear which person we're like.
Yeah.
If you told me this was from the Jedi's perception or perspective, I would have totally believed you. But from what we know, this is from the dark side user's perspective.
But isn't it still like it's from a Jedi going to... Possibly.
Yes.
So it's possibly going to be like a transformation. It could just be that this is like the first season sort of thing, where it's like this is still a lighter side of it, which I could see, because they kind of hint at some sinister notes, especially like the music being a little bit darker.
Darkness rising. They have the Sith outro, which is typically, which it's actually interesting. The little Disney Plus icon thing that they have. Usually when it's Star Wars theme, it's a lightsaber going across. This time it's a red lightsaber with the swoosh, and then the plus sign is actually light. Unlike the Star Wars Vision Season 2 one, which was all red.
Interesting.
So I think that's a good note that we're going to see both sides of this. And I think that will add to this idea that we have here, which we theorized before we hopped on the podcast after watching it a few times, after filming the reaction video. If you want to see that, check out our YouTube channel for that. But what we theorized with this specific phrasing of it's not about good and evil, it's about power and who's allowed to use it. Taking a different approach than we've heard before, which is this is about power and those too weak to wield it. So this isn't about weakness and strength and who can use it, whether or not they have the strength for that. This is about the right to use the power, which I think is really interesting, a very interesting idea.
It really spins it into a more political view.
Yeah.
Where it's like maybe the Jedi shouldn't be this powerful.
Yeah.
And it's more from like the perspective of, it feels more like a commoner's perspective, or like a certain, especially with the one lady with the swirl on their head. And she's the one who's saying it. It seems like she's more of like I don't want to say deity, but she's got this kind of
almost like Night Sisters-esque kind of thing.
Yeah, she's got this presence about her where she clearly has like some kind of following. It seems like it's coming from this group of people who they're not telling us if they want the power for themselves.
Yeah.
But they are questioning that power. So that's interesting. That I'm already there. I'm like, cool. Yeah, let's see if the Jedi are really cut out to handle this situation.
And I think you can, too, look at it from the perspective. We open this trailer up from the Padawan's perspective. We see the younglings in this role, and they're asked to close their eyes and look at what they see. And I think you can look at it from this view, where maybe it's not about the light side and the dark side. Maybe it truly is some people are more drawn to the darker aspects of the Force while others are drawn to the lighter aspects. And that's not something that you can necessarily change. It is just your specific attunement to the Force. I think you could almost look at it from that way, from how we're looking at it in that trailer, seeing the young girl and her perspective, which is the light and the life and the Force. And then the other, which may or may not be our main character that ends up. Yeah. This might be a flashback. Might be I see fire. And that is her path and her specific sensitivities to the Force almost.
That's something that's very interesting in this trailer. I don't feel like we really saw the main character. Like,
we have many people in this realm, and I guess it's good that this is a TV show and it's not like a movie. So maybe, hopefully they have the ability to highlight each of these characters and their roles, but this is something that's going to be very different from anything else that we've seen in Star Wars.
Yeah. The person that we saw most in that trailer was probably the Matrix lady.
Yes.
I'm not sure what they're naming that character yet. But we see her a lot. We don't hear her at all.
Yeah.
So are we following her through most of this for this I don't know.
Yeah.
I never thought that she was going to be the main character. So I'm so curious. What are we doing here, guys?
Yeah, and like the actual overview for the series is this. An investigation into a shocking crime spree pits a respected Jedi Master against a dangerous warrior from his past. As more clues emerge, they will travel down a dark path where sinister forces reveal all is not what it seems. I definitely think the intro of the trailer is definitely a flashback. And we're going to see this relationship of a master and a Jedi and his revelation of what that happened. Maybe he thought she was dead. Maybe she failed because of the I see fire statement. Like, there's a lot of different ways that this could go in how they want to take it. But I definitely think we're going to see a lot of questioning of what the Jedi Order is and its place in the galaxy. Because I think that's ultimately what they're asking here is like, whose right is it to control the powers of the Force? Why do these people have that right when they are just as flawed as everybody else?
Yeah.
That's my reading on it. I could be completely wrong. And also, I'm already wrong in terms of its placement in the timeline. It's 100 years before the Phantom Menace, not 200 years. So
yeah, we're definitely gonna get things wrong. I mean, this is just the first real viewing of
these
this.
Are all theories. We haven't looked online to see any other theories either, so we might be completely off the rails of what everyone else is thinking, or we might be saying the exact same things. I don't know yet. We had to work while the trailer was coming out until our lunch break, and finally we're able to get to it. But there's a lot here when it comes to how the Acolyte's going to change Star Wars, because we've got Mandalorian going into the movies. We've got a bigger focus on the movies. We don't know where things are going to be headed with the TV show, especially we know Ahsoka Season 2 is going to happen because that's been officially announced, but past that, we don't necessarily know. I personally want these smaller stories that focus on different things than the movies do. And I think that's backed up by the Acolyte. Because like we've been talking about on the podcast in the past, it's rumored that this could be an ongoing series. So just because they're setting up this view as the Master and Apprentice doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the full story that this specific season is going to take. It might be a story for the whole series, but this might just be a piece for season 1.
It already feels like it could be really big. This is a much deeper seated problem than just
it's not like 8 episodes are gonna solve anything here.
It's not just some Jedi Padawan going off the rails. This is more's going on here, which is very exciting. I think this is a very different take than what we've really ever seen in Star Wars, and I think it's really refreshing, and I think we're moving into a really good state for Star Wars. It gives me a lot of hope for the shows.
I hope so. And I think Star Wars does a really good job with trying these new ideas out with the first whatever iteration with it. And hopefully they can keep that creative force throughout the whole thing. I feel like with Mandalorian, they tried something incredibly new and then it slowly became more formulaic, which is apt to happen with anything of that scale.
Yeah.
But I hope that they can take this and they can do something new and we can experience these new characters in this new light, in this new era, and how it's going to impact the whole of Star Wars. And if this is successful in whatever metrics that they end up looking at, I could see this being the new or the next era that they want to explore with. They, instead of like the Mandoverse where they have like 20 years, maybe 30 that they can play with.
Yeah.
This time frame, they have 100 years before they ever need to introduce anything to tie into the prequel series.
True.
So this is the first time that we're going to get something net new that doesn't have a tie into anything else in Star Wars.
True.
And that makes me really excited.
My hope with this potential series is that they know an end.
Yes.
That at this point, they know this is where we want it to go.
Yeah.
If we get that far.
Yes.
That's my only hope. That's my only caveat to like.
If there are going to be more seasons, do Avatar: The Last Airbender, not Korra.
Yeah.
Make sure that there is an overarching series and theme and story with characters and story beats. And then say, hey, we're going to make season 1 of this, but we know the things that we're going to do next if it is successful.
Yeah, and it doesn't even need to be like some grand thing. Like
No.
it can just be many things, or like
This is a new time period.
Yeah.
We don't have to do
No.
any of the playbooks that they've had in anything else. This is like net new, so they don't have to follow the tropes.
yeah. If anything, it's just exciting to get new characters
Yeah.
and more Jedi. Honestly, I'm here for it.
Yes. It's crazy to see all of those Jedi on screen at a single time, just seeing all the lights here. I also think we're going to see some different iterations of the Force, because at that end scene, you have like this Sith Force burst that like wipes everything away. We don't have any context on how that works or what it is, or if it's a bomb or if it is a Force power. I think that's going to be interesting to see. I think we may see more of the mystical sides of the Force with the one character with the swirls on her face. I think that could be a whole different sect here of Force users or people that are around the Force or the Jedi or the Sith. Who necessarily knows? It does look like they're on the planet Luke goes away on. Like that looks very similar. The island and then the other islands surrounding it, and this very hermit-like interaction, very much callbacks to Rey and Luke on that specific planet. So I think there might be something there that they can play with. This is very exciting to see. All of my ideas and theories, I'm like, oh my gosh, the opportunities are limitless.
You know what else is really unique that we're seeing in this is hand-to-hand combat with a Jedi. All we've ever seen is either lightsabers or like stormtroopers' guns.
Yeah.
We've never actually seen someone come at a Jedi with a knife.
Yeah.
Who brings a knife to a Jedi fight? I don't know. This person does, though. And that is fascinating to see. That is so cool.
That's a good catch, because you don't necessarily notice it all that much. And it doesn't look like a vibro knife either. It just looks like a knife.
It looks like a
so
shank ya.
I think that's a great point to say, hey, this is what it looks like for the Jedi close to the height of their power. This is what it looks like for a new dark iteration of the Force user to attack on this new grounds. Maybe it's because she didn't get all of her training around the Force and doesn't feel as confident there, or maybe she doesn't have access to her lightsaber, or maybe there's something special with that blade in particular that she needs to do the final kill with.
Maybe it's that she just needs to prove a point. Is that these Jedi are not all powerful.
Yeah.
And you can defeat them as a normal person.
Yeah, they don't deserve all of the reverence almost. I think that's a good point. There's a lot in this trailer, but I do want to take this one more direction.
Okay.
What do we think about this new era? the High Republic. We've seen mentions of it. There's a whole lot of books and graphic novel material out there around the High Republic. But this is the first time we're getting a highlight to the scale of this.
Mm-hmm. It feels clean again, kind of almost prequel-y.
You think so?
I think...
Except for that one particular planet.
Yeah. No, I just mean like whenever we see the Jedi, it feels clean.
Yes.
And I like that. I like that kind of nod. I like that shift.
And it contrasts too from like when they're in the people they're supposed to be protecting. Like there's this clean crispness and then there's everything else.
Yeah.
There's the Jedi and humanity.
There's like a slight Mandalorian first season grit when you see like the people just milling about doing their daily lives. It's like, okay, there is a shift. There is a difference here, and that's cool.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. And I think it's going to be cool to see as this story goes on. I think there's going to be a storytelling beat with their robes because you see some of the Jedi much like grittier and beat up. Yeah. And I think as the story goes on and as they question themselves more and have to ask even harder questions of the Jedi, I think we may see that represented in the characters and their costumes.
Yeah.
And how like as they go deeper in fighting this evil, they also have to address the dirt and the grit and the bad things that they've been hiding from their perch on the mountain.
I think it's interesting. I said it right at the beginning of the reaction. I was like, oh, the costumes look really good.
Yes, they do.
They do. They look super good. And I actually really like that that one of the first clips that we see is one of the Jedi kind of incognito.
Yeah.
But they're not just wearing their robes. It's like, oh, I appreciate that. Because it's like anytime in like the prequels, it was just like, we're just going to wrap our robes a little closer.
If we put another robe
up
on top of our robe, that will hide us that we're definitely not a Jedi.
Definitely inconspicuous. It's like, guys, Obi-Wan, I don't think you're fooling anybody.
Yeah. Everyone knows you're a Jedi, pal.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a good thing to point out because, and it's also representative of the area or the era itself with the Jedi having like thicker, like almost more hand-spun, hand-created robes almost.
Yeah.
Like at least the threads look thicker. And I think that shows subtly that this is a different era. This isn't the prequel era. This is before the prequel era, before they have the technology or whatever to make the finer fabrics.
Again, more Jedi is great. I like the idea of a conflict with the Jedi. Just this, like, we know they're gonna win, but what does winning cost?
Yeah.
You know, and obviously it's going to be the start of the decay.
Maybe they don't necessarily win in the long term, because clearly we see the Jedi Order fail miserably. This might be the moment that like starts chipping at the or makes the crack at the foundation for Palpatine to ultimately chip away at. That this could be that show. Yeah. And I'm really excited to see where we go with this and what it looks like for Star Wars as a whole to go in this new direction.
I know. It's like, I don't know if I want it to directly relate back to the original.
Yeah.
Everything always kind of will, but...
Yeah, my hope is for it to stay separate from everything else, but we do know, because it takes place 100 years before the Phantom Menace, we know the Jedi are still there. So they can't necessarily lose, but there needs to be something there that like shows, yes, okay, we're not retconning the entire prequel trilogy and the original trilogy. This is its own thing. So I think having the 100 years to play around with will help with that, but maybe this specific part of the Jedi Order fails because of that. We don't know the full specifics. I think a lot of the official like Jedi all together stuff like are flashbacks. It's like them at the height rather than them in the actual moment. Yeah. So we'll see where that goes. But very much excited. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you find podcasts. If you're listening to those on the other platforms, check us out. And if you'd like to give your feedback, contact uplinkpodcast.com. As always, thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.